9:58 p.m. That's when Jenna Hale's phone touched a cell tower for the last time. Inside her Montana cabin, the lights were still on. Her winter coat hung untouched by the door. Her shoes sat neatly on the mat. The heating system hummed at 62 degrees. But Jenna was gone. For 13 years, investigators believed that 9:58 ping was just another dead end. A phone dying somewhere in the frozen woods. A young teacher who'd wandered into a December blizzard and never came back. But they were wrong. When a cold case detective rebuilt that cell signal using technology that didn't exist in 2011, he discovered something that changed everything. At 9:58, Jenna's phone wasn't inside the cabin. It was outside. Moving north. Toward a ravine searchers never checked. And the person with exactly 45 minutes unaccounted for that same night, the person who reported Jenna missing, the person who swore she had no idea what happened, had been lying from the very beginning. This is the story of how a single overlooked detail, buried in 13 years of cold case files, finally exposed the truth about what happened to Jenna Hail. But before we begin, if you're drawn to cases like this, cases where the truth refuses to stay buried, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to Cold Case Beacon right now, hit that like button, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Because we're about to dive deep into one of the most meticulously solved cold cases in modern forensic history. Let's begin. Livingston, Montana. December 20th, 2011. The town was buried under a deep cold snap. Thick snow blanketed the roads. Temperatures had dropped below 10 degrees Celsius. Mill Creek Road, a winding mountain route nearly 10 miles from town, had become a corridor of complete isolation. Scattered wooden cabins stood against the pine forest, each one separated by silence, distance, and darkness. In one of those cabins lived 24-year-old Jenna Hail. Jenna was a contracted teacher at Park High School. She'd only been in Montana for 6 months, teaching literature to high school students while living in a one-bedroom rental she shared with her roommate, Mara Quinn. Jenna kept to herself socially, but she maintained close contact with Elise Ward, a fellow teacher and the person she trusted most besides Mara. December 20th began like any other day. Jenna finished a late teaching session and left Park High School around 7:40 in the evening. She stopped at the Immigrant gas station to buy hot tea before heading home. Security camera footage captured her at 8:15 that night. She walked out of the store alone, carrying a paper cup, showing no signs of distress. No one followed her. No one approached her. She got into her car and drove away. It was the last time anyone would see Jenna Hail in public. Jenna had a routine she never broke. Every evening at 10:30, she joined a video call with her sister. In 6 months, she had never missed it. Not once. But that night, she didn't connect. She didn't message. She didn't respond to calls. Her sister grew concerned. She reached out to Elise Ward, who knew Jenna's habits better than anyone. Elise tried calling. No answer. She sent text messages. Nothing. Growing increasingly worried, Elise called Mara Quinn to check on Jenna at the cabin. Around 12:20 in the morning on December 21st, Mara drove back to the cabin from town. What she found made her blood run cold. The door was unlocked. The living room light was still on. The heating system was running. Everything looked normal, routine, undisturbed. Except Jenna wasn't there. There were no signs that luggage had been packed. No coat was missing. No boots were gone. It was as if Jenna had simply evaporated from inside the cabin. Mara immediately called Elise for support. Together, using flashlights, they checked the perimeter of the cabin and the edge of the nearby forest. The snow was fresh, recently fallen. If anyone had walked through it, there would be tracks. Clear, obvious tracks. But there were no footprints. No drag marks. No disturbed snow. Nothing. With weather conditions deteriorating rapidly and no way to contact Jenna, they knew they couldn't search on their own. At 1:17 in the morning, Mara made the call. Park County Dispatch received the missing person report for Jenna Hail in the Mill Creek Road area. The response was immediate and aggressive. The report was classified as high risk due to the sub-zero temperatures, the mountainous terrain, and the fact that the disappearance occurred at night. 2 patrol vehicles and 1 search and rescue member arrived at the cabin around 1:45 in the morning. The scene was secured immediately. What they found was deeply unsettling. The front door was slightly ajar, but there were no signs of forced entry. Inside, the living room and kitchen lights were still on. The heating system was running at a comfortable temperature. Everyday items were in their usual places, as described by Mara. Jenna's shoes remained by the door. Her winter coat, essential for survival in sub-zero weather, hung untouched on the hook. Her phone was not found anywhere in the cabin, but her purse and wallet were sitting on the table next to the sofa, cards and cash undisturbed. Nothing was missing except Jenna herself. Mara and Elise were separated for initial statements. Both provided consistent timelines. Jenna had left work around 7:40, appeared at the immigrant gas station at 8:15, and had no further contact afterward. Mara said the last time she heard any noise in the cabin was around 9 in the evening, but she wasn't certain whether Jenna had come home by then. Elise indicated that the 10:30 video call schedule was confirmed and stated emphatically that Jenna missing the appointment without notice was completely out of character. In 6 months, Jenna had never missed that call. Not once. A preliminary timeline gap from 8:15 to 10:30 was established as completely unaccounted for. And environmental conditions were deteriorating rapidly. The team made a critical decision. They elevated the priority level and switched the case to emergency search mode. Search and rescue forces were mobilized immediately. The goal was clear but daunting: cover a 1-mile radius around the cabin before weather conditions became too hazardous for continued outdoor operations. Starting at 2:20 in the morning, the search team divided into 3 coordinated groups: 2 foot patrol teams, 1 all-terrain vehicle team, and 1 K9 unit specialized in tracking human scent in snowy conditions. The search pattern followed an expanding circle model. They started with a 200-meter radius, then expanded to 400 meters, 800 meters, and up to a maximum of 1 mile, adjusted for the actual terrain. The area featured gentle slopes, thick brush, snow drifts, and dense pine stands. Teams used high-powered lights combined with GPS devices to stay within assigned boundaries and avoid overlap. The K9 unit led toward the northeast, the area with a secondary trail into the forest and the direction of strong winds that could potentially retain scent if Jenna had left the cabin for even a short time before heavy snow covered her tracks. The dog gave a weak alert at a point near the tree line about 60 meters from the cabin, then quickly lost the trail. Fresh snow had completely covered any scent track that might have existed. The foot patrol team swept through flatter terrain to the south and checked frozen streams to the northwest, marking each location with reflective stakes and scanning for compressed snow patches. By 4:50 in the morning, the rapid response search concluded. The entire 1-mile radius had been covered, but the area surrounding the cabin provided no clear direction of travel, no evidence that Jenna left on foot, and no basis to indicate she had moved through the snow since the suspected time of disappearance. Search and Rescue Command immediately shifted to an extended line-based search strategy. Over the next 6 hours, teams swept 3 directions from the cabin. Mill Creek Trailhead to the northeast, where Jenna had run on weekends. Paradise Valley to the south, where sparse ranches dotted the forest edge. Deep Creek to the northwest, with its steep terrain and frozen streams. Faint footprints appeared and vanished. A circular depression in snow turned out to be an elk print. Ice showed no breaks. And by 7:10 in the morning, when the Park County helicopter deployed equipped with infrared FLIR to sweep all 3 areas from the air, flying in a spiral pattern outward to nearly a 3-mile radius, the system detected nothing but animals and reflections from warm rocks. By the end of the morning, after all extended lines had been systematically searched and fully documented, the compiled report was clear and disturbing. None of the 3 expanded areas produced identifying leads. Trails showed no continuing movement sequence. Streams and ice remained unbroken. FLIR detected no human body signals within the searched range. No evidence whatsoever established Jenna Hale's direction of departure from the cabin on the night of December 20, 2011. The expanded search yielded no viable leads, causing the investigative focus to shift to gathering witness statements in order to accurately reconstruct Jenna Hale's entire movements on December 20. The investigation team split into 2 groups. One handled interviews at Park High School, while the other worked with neighbors along Mill Creek Road, staff at the Immigrant gas station, and anyone who might have seen Jenna between 6 and 9 in the evening. The school investigation team noted that Jenna finished her last class around 4:10 in the afternoon and left the teacher's lounge around 4:30 in a normal mood, showing no signs of stress or conflict. 3 colleagues, including Elise Ward, indicated that Jenna left school earlier than usual to avoid heavy evening snowfall. When cross-checked with the school entrance gate camera, investigators confirmed that Jenna's vehicle left the parking lot at 4:41, heading directly south on US 89, consistent with the route from school to the cabin. In the residential area along Mill Creek Road, only one neighbor saw a vehicle similar to Jenna's passing through around 7:55 in the evening, though limited lighting and falling snow prevented confirmation. At the Immigrant gas station, the evening shift employee indicated that Jenna stopped to buy hot tea, paid by card, and left shortly afterward. Security camera footage showed her at 8:15 exiting the store with no one accompanying or approaching her. One customer recalled she seemed hurried but not panicked. Combining all witness statements, the timeline was reconstructed. Jenna left school at 4:41. No intermediate activity was indicated until 8:15 when she was captured on camera at Immigrant. The period from 8:15 to approximately 8:50 represents reasonable travel time to the cabin, though no witness definitively saw Jenna on that route. Around 9 in the evening, Mara reported hearing a faint sound from the direction of the kitchen, but couldn't confirm whether this indicated Jenna's arrival. From 9 to 10:30, when Jenna was expected for her video call, no witness or camera recorded any activity by her. When comparing Mara's and Elisa's statements, investigators noted a minor inconsistency. Elise stated she texted Jenna at 9:50 and observed the read receipt, while Mara claimed that from the time she entered the cabin around 9:15, Jenna's bedroom light remained off and she heard no further sounds. This difference was flagged for follow-up due to its potential relevance to the exact time Jenna was last using her phone. Elise emphasized that Jenna never changed family video call plans on her own initiative, especially during the period close to Christmas when the family maintained frequent contact. She also affirmed that Jenna was not someone who went out at night, hiked alone after dark, or had any reason to leave the cabin without her coat or phone. The investigative team reached a preliminary conclusion: there is no social, psychological, or routine-based evidence indicating Jenna voluntarily left the cabin on the night of December 20. All data points to her loss of contact being abnormal for her habits. After completing the timeline based on witness statements, the investigation team moved to Jenna Hale's phone data to more precisely determine the time points and possible locations of any incident. Since Jenna used AT&T, investigators submitted an emergency request to extract call logs, data logs, messages, and cell tower records related to the evening of December 20. The carrier's report provided a detailed list of connection sessions. The data showed that from 6 in the evening to 8 in the evening, the phone connected to towers along US 89, fully consistent with the journey from Park High School toward Immigrant. A ping at 8:14 registered a connection to the Immigrant North Sector 2 tower exactly matching the camera timestamp at the gas station. Thereafter, from 8:14 to 9:30, the phone made no calls or large data operations, but still recorded automatic pings at greater distances, including 2 pings at 8:42 and 9:11 connecting to a tower in the direction of Mill Creek Road, indicating the phone was moving or had entered an area of poorer coverage. Most significantly was the ping at 9:58 recorded as the last time Jenna's device connected to any network infrastructure. This ping originated from the Mill Creek Ridge Sector 1 tower, a small tower with narrow coverage running along the mountainside and only rarely registering devices unless the user is standing at certain specific points, the turnoff road to Jenna's cabin and a short section of the forest trail behind it. The 9:58 timestamp was immediately cross-referenced with the witness-based timeline. It falls precisely between two key points: the time Mara believed she heard an indistinct sound and the time Elise attempted to contact Jenna at 9:50 but received no clear response beyond a possible read receipt. Combining the ping data with these events, investigators recognized that the window of approximately 9:45 to 10 was the period during which both witnesses could not verify Jenna's presence inside the cabin and also the only time her phone registered a signal near the cabin. This narrowed the area of interest to a very small zone, no more than 250 meters from the cabin door to the northern forest edge where the Mill Creek Ridge Sector 1 coverage perfectly aligned. GIS analysts built a signal propagation simulation model to confirm the tower's actual coverage under snowy conditions. The results showed that the 9:58 ping could not have occurred if the phone was deep inside the cabin or more than 300 meters south of it. In the specialist report, investigators noted the second possibility as more likely because the old wooden cabin design typically causes signal loss, making indoor pings difficult to achieve. Correlating this with Mara's statement created another noteworthy point. Mara claimed that from the time she heard the sound until she checked inside the cabin, Jenna's bedroom light was off and there was no sign of a lit phone screen or notification sound. Yet that same window coincides with the last ping from Jenna's phone. This was flagged as an indirect inconsistency, not strong enough to establish suspicion, but sufficient to require closer monitoring of Mara's statements. After identifying the final signal zone, the investigation map was updated. The cabin became the central point with the 300-meter radius to the north marked in red while other directions were downgraded in priority. The 9:58 ping became the last technically confirmed point, serving as the foundation for narrowing the search area and analyzing behavior during Jenna Hale's final recorded hours of activity. Forensics returned to Jenna Hale's cabin early on the morning of December 21. The forensics team, consisting of 3 technicians and 1 scene investigator, secured the area, establishing a wider perimeter to avoid contamination from overnight search activities. Examination began at the front door, where technicians used low-angle lighting to search for drag marks or compression marks. They discovered a narrow drag mark approximately 18 centimeters long running from the edge of the threshold inward. Although no clear shape was visible, the drag mark showed low compression, suggesting it may have been caused by a light object or the flat edge of a shoe. Adjacent to the drag mark was a small streak of reddish-brown soil, drier than the surrounding winter ground, adhering to the wooden edge of the door frame. This soil sample was collected using a sterile swab and placed in a sealed paper evidence bag. Moving inside the cabin, the forensics team found a small 6mm fragment of gray-blue fabric on the mat just inside the door that did not match the material of Jenna's coat, scarf, wool items, or cabin rugs. The fiber was collected with sterile tweezers and separately sealed. On the thin layer of dust beside the low wooden table, an indistinct lateral smear was present, sufficient to indicate that an object had been dragged or someone had braced their hand on the surface recently. No furniture was significantly disturbed. There were absolutely no indicators of a struggle. The kitchen area was examined under UV light for bodily fluids with negative results. On the wooden floor near the kitchen, another small patch of similar soil was discovered, ground into very fine particles indicating pressure from a shoe or heavy object. In Jenna's bedroom, the bed remained undisturbed. Her winter coat and gloves still hung on the hook near the door, reinforcing that Jenna did not leave the cabin intentionally in sub-zero outdoor temperatures. All windows were closed with no signs of prying or external entry. Outside the cabin, the porch area and ground were reswept using surface scanners and oblique lighting. Fresh snow had erased most traces, but a slight shallow depression near the porch edge was documented. The team examined the entire cabin perimeter within a 10-meter radius. The complete absence of footprints or drag marks in snow that should have left very clear traces if a person had moved was recorded as a key factor. The forensics team sealed all collected evidence, the gray-blue fiber, 2 foreign soil samples, scene photographs and position diagrams. Everything was transferred to the Park County Crime Lab for analysis. The preliminary conclusion was that the cabin showed no signs of resistance, no evidence of Jenna being attacked inside the house, no signs of struggle, no unusually displaced furniture, and no blood or bodily fluids. However, the cabin did show signs of someone entering or exiting around the time of disappearance, the drag mark near the door, the foreign soil streak not matching the surrounding ground, and a fiber not belonging to Jenna's belongings. These traces support the possibility that the event leading to Jenna's disappearance occurred just outside the threshold or in the immediate porch area during the window of 9 to 10. After completing the first on-site examination and analyzing the timeline in cell phone pings, the investigative team moved into hypothesis evaluation. 3 main hypotheses were considered. First, Jenna Hail left the cabin voluntarily. The data showed that Jenna did not take her winter coat, gloves, wallet, or any essentials needed in sub-zero weather. Her phone made no calls after 8:15, and her consistent 10:30 video call habit had never been skipped. The cabin showed no signs of rushed packing. All witnesses indicated Jenna had no plans to leave and exhibited no psychological distress. The voluntary departure hypothesis was ruled out as having no realistic basis. Second, Jenna suffered an accident in the woods. If Jenna had left on foot and suffered an accident, she would have left footprints, drag marks, or dropped items. However, search and rescue teams thoroughly searched a 1-mile radius and all extended lines, including high-risk areas, finding absolutely no matching evidence. FLIR equipment detected no human body heat signatures. The cabin showed no indication that Jenna had dressed for being outdoors, and without a coat, survival time would be extremely short. Yet FLIR should still have picked up residual heat signals in the first few hours. This hypothesis was nearly ruled out. Third, disappearance due to human factors, including conflict, coercion, or concealment behavior. This hypothesis considered the possibility that Jenna came into contact with another person between 8:50 and 10, resulting in an incident right near the cabin after which her presence was concealed. Key elements supporting this included the drag mark at the door, soil streaks inconsistent with the natural ground, an unfamiliar gray-blue fiber, and the complete absence of movement tracks despite clear evidence that someone had entered or exited. The 9:58 phone ping placed the device very close to the cabin during a time when both witnesses could not verify Jenna's presence. When combining all data, the investigative team determined that the human factors hypothesis had the highest degree of fit. The cabin showed no signs of struggle, yet the door was left ajar. No footprints led away, but small marks were present near the porch. Jenna's phone made its final ping outside the cabin before going completely dark, and the timing coincided precisely with when Jenna was expected to make her family call. The third hypothesis was designated as the central focus, becoming the only remaining direction capable of explaining the emerging chain of facts. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. Once the human factors hypothesis was placed at the center, the investigative team shifted to analyzing the closest relationships of Jenna Hail, particularly with Mara Quinn, her housemate, and Elise Ward, her close colleague friend. Orders were issued to extract electronic data from emails, text messages, chat histories, and personal correspondence. In the 3 months prior to her disappearance, emails between Jenna and Mara showed fairly normal household duties, but text messages began revealing tense exchanges starting in early December. A December 3rd message from Jenna to Elise stating, "Mara lately is on edge, not sure what set her off," indicated cabin relations were no longer stable. A December 7th message from Jenna to Mara about limiting guests at the cabin, and Mara's irritated response, revealed disagreements over shared space. In Elise's data, investigators found messages in which Jenna shared that Mara sometimes displayed emotional possessiveness, especially when Jenna spent more time with Elise at school. When analyzing Elise's statements, investigators observed minor discrepancies between her initial and supplemental statements. Elise initially said her last text to Jenna was around 9:50 and appeared to have been read, but later described being unsure if the message was read or just a system status. This was noted because the time frame directly related to the final 9:58 phone ping. Meanwhile, Mara's text messages to Jenna on December 20 showed a brief exchange at 5:12 in the evening. Mara asked, "When are you coming back?" and Jenna replied probably after stopping by Immigrant. But notably around 8:52, consistent with Jenna's travel time from the gas station, Mara sent an unread message asking, "Where are you?" Investigators cross-referenced this with Mara's statement that she didn't know whether Jenna had returned, raising a critical question: why did Mara inquire about Jenna's location at the exact moment Jenna was highly likely to be very close to the cabin? The investigative team identified 3 potential conflict clusters: everyday household disagreements, issues regarding personal emotional boundaries, and unresolved tensions related to shared space in harsh winter conditions. Although no evidence demonstrated any argument escalated beyond normal levels, the electronic data clearly showed an imbalance in relational expectations, and Jenna had shared feelings of discomfort about Mara tracking her schedule too closely. The team determined that the relationship formed a triangular structure with emotional dependency skewed toward Mara accompanied by mild controlling behaviors. When combined with the final phone ping, the drag mark, and absence of snow movement tracks, this formed an initial foundation for potential motive linked to internal cabin conflict. The analysis strengthened the human factors hypothesis. But when matched against legal evidentiary requirements, the team had to acknowledge serious deficiencies that prevented the case from advancing. First, there was no body or any direct evidence demonstrating Jenna had died or suffered violence. Second, no one saw Jenna enter the cabin, and no one observed any strangers or suspicious vehicles near the area. The minor inconsistencies in statements weren't strong enough to build a criminal hypothesis without supporting physical evidence. Third, although the 9:58 ping narrowed the last known location, it wasn't precise enough to pinpoint where any incident occurred. Heavy snowfall had erased any possible footprints or drag marks. There was no blood trail, no signs of heavy impact, and no personal items left outside. With these 3 core deficiencies, no body, no direct witnesses, no confirmed incident location, every hypothesis remained at the level of inference. The team conducted dozens of additional interviews throughout 2012, re-examined the cabin 3 times, reran weather models, but no new signs emerged. Soil and fiber samples sent to the state laboratory yielded no breakthroughs. The gray-blue fiber didn't match anyone's belongings. The soil samples showed no organic material related to a human body. Financial history checks revealed Jenna's credit cards had no activity after December 20. The phone never powered back on. Her vehicle remained parked. Her passport was not taken. By early 2013, after more than a year of active handling, the Park County Sheriff's Office concluded there were no new leads and no legal basis to pursue further intrusive measures. In the final summary report, the lead investigator stated, "All available resources have been utilized to the maximum extent permitted by law." However, no evidence establishing a crime or death has been found. Therefore, the case is temporarily suspended from active investigation. In June 2013, Jenna Hail's file was officially transferred to the Park County Cold Case Unit with the status, "Unresolved Missing Person, No Confirmed Criminal Element." The case was closed but not terminated, remaining open for reactivation should new evidence emerge. And once again, the file went back on the shelf. During the period from 2013 to 2023, the Cold Case Unit conducted 3 periodic reviews. The 2014 review found that no technology available could enhance analysis beyond previous conclusions. No new witnesses appeared. No phone signals reactivated. No matching remains were found in Montana or neighboring states. And once again, the file went back on the shelf. The 2017 review was more thorough due to advances in mobile data retrieval, but the 2011-era cell tower system didn't retain sufficient metadata to accurately reconstruct movement. The passage of time reduced reliability of witness statements as memories degraded. This review also noted that Mara Quinn had left Montana at the end of 2016 to relocate to Spokane, Washington, though this wasn't deemed suspicious as she departed years after investigative pressure had ceased. And once again, the file went back on the shelf. The 2020 review occurred amid improvements in DNA forensics and trace analysis, but offered no practical new approach. The gray-blue fiber was too small for DNA extraction. The soil showed no biological markers. Digital data couldn't be further expanded because platforms had altered storage structures. The review team noted that most foundational information had reached its exploitation limit, and any breakthrough would require entirely new evidence. And once again, the file went back on the shelf. Across all 3 reviews, no new witnesses emerged. No unidentified missing person reports matched. No compatible remains were discovered. The 2020 report concluded that after nearly a decade, the case still lacked 3 decisive elements: no body, no confession, no new evidence. It continued to be maintained in the cold case files, awaiting new data from technology or individuals. Throughout these 10 years, the file remained completely static until circumstances shifted in an entirely unforeseen direction. In 2024, when the Park County Sheriff's Office launched a pilot program to reanalyze cold cases using new technology, Jenna Hail's case was prioritized due to its mysterious nature and data gaps that could benefit from modern tools. Detective Daniel Quincade, an investigator experienced in mobile signal analysis and microdata processing, was assigned the entire case file. From the first week, Quincade reviewed all physical evidence, crime scene descriptions, search maps, and digital data previously limited by 2011 technology. The first step he took was reanalysis of cell site data, re-evaluating Jenna's phone's final ping at 9:58. Advances in location estimation algorithms based on signal strength, connection stability, and angle of arrival allowed Quincade to reconstruct the coverage pattern of Mill Creek Ridge Sector 1 in greater detail than ever before. By integrating modern three-dimensional terrain data from the USGS and a snow-induced signal attenuation model, he determined that the 9:58 ping could not have originated from inside the cabin, but could only have occurred when the device was in an open area within a narrow signal corridor extending from the cabin porch to the dense tree line to the north, approximately 180 to 300 meters long. This significantly narrowed the area of interest. Quincade marked this corridor on the map and added it to locations requiring field verification. The next step involved soil spectroscopy, a new technique allowing comparison of old soil samples with the statewide Montana Soil Database. The state laboratory still retained the soil samples collected in 2011 under proper preservation. Using absorption and reflectance spectroscopy, the cabin soil was analyzed across 42 mineral indicators, including clay content, silica, iron oxide, and trace elements. When cross-referenced with the digitized statewide soil map, Quincade discovered a 90% match between the anomalous soil sample found in the cabin and a narrow band of soil located at Mill Creek Ravine, a deep ravine about 0.7 miles north of the cabin, outside the rapid search perimeter in 2011 because the route was then completely snow-covered and unsuitable for nighttime access. Mill Creek Ravine has distinctive geology, a surface soil layer rich in fine-grained montmorillonite clay mixed with iron oxide, nearly a perfect match with the soil found on the cabin door threshold and the crushed particles under the kitchen floor. This was the first time in over 10 years that a clear physical indicator emerged, linking Jenna's cabin to a specific location in the forest. Quincade immediately added the ravine to the Level 1 priority focus points list. While analyzing material evidence, Quincade re-examined digital devices collected in 2011, including Jenna's personal camera, previously deemed irrelevant because the memory card contained no noteworthy images. However, using next-generation data recovery software, he retrieved a sequence of deleted photos. One photo showing a forest scene at dusk, most likely taken during Jenna's walk a few days before her disappearance, revealed 2 human silhouettes standing near the tree line in an area where, according to Jenna's message to Elise, she had taken trail photos for class documentation. Analysis of lighting and shadow direction helped determine the relative distance between the camera and the 2 figures. The estimated location was no more than 300 meters north of the cabin, exactly matching the cell site signal corridor Quincade had just identified. Although facial identification was highly unlikely, the presence of two human figures in an area where Jenna supposedly walked alone raised a critical question. Kincaid cross-referenced the estimated coordinates with the topographic map and noted that the tree line in the photo was at the beginning of the path down to the ravine, suggesting Jenna may have been more familiar with this area than the original file indicated. When combining the three new data sources, the narrowed cell site signal corridor, the soil spectroscopy linking the cabin to the ravine, and the recovered photo showing human figures near the ravine entrance, a complete pattern began to emerge. The ravine was not only a location connected to the soil sample, but also a site of human activity related to Jenna in the time frame close to her disappearance. Kincaid placed the ravine at the center of the reinvestigation. With new data from cell site analysis, soil spectroscopy, and recovered photos, Detective Kincaid moved into in-depth timeline reconstruction for the 8 to 10 window, considered the critical time frame. The goal was to integrate all old data with new technical data to precisely determine Jenna's final movements and verify alignment with Mara's behavior. Kincaid began by reconstructing Jenna's journey from the immigrant gas station based on the 8:15 camera footage. Given light snowfall and US 89 not being fully icy, the drive would have taken approximately 25 to 30 minutes. Thus, Jenna likely arrived in the cabin area between 8:40 and 8:50. When combined with the 8:42 and 9:11 mobile pings, cell site data indicated that Jenna's phone had entered the Mill Creek Road signal area, consistent with her returning to or approaching the cabin. Kincaid continued analyzing the final 9:58 ping. Thanks to the new signal model, the ping location was narrowed to a tight signal corridor leading from the cabin porch toward the forest edge, crossing the path down to the ravine. This meant Jenna or her phone had moved outside the cabin and headed north between approximately 9:40 and 10. To verify feasibility of the cabin ravine entrance journey, Kincaid conducted movement simulations. He drove to the cabin, set his watch, and walked straight to the strongest signal point indicated by the cell site model. Result: approximately 4 minutes to reach the forest edge and an additional 6 minutes to reach the head of the ravine, totaling 10 minutes of moderate-paced walking in light snow. If Jenna had actually left the cabin at 9:48, then 9:58 perfectly aligns with the time her device appeared in the signal corridor. Conversely, if the phone was in someone else's possession, the cabin ravine journey still matches the final ping timing. After establishing the plausibility of the 9:58 marker, Kincaid analyzed Mara's old statements to determine whether she had an unaccounted-for time period. Mara's 2011 statement indicated she was in the cabin from about 9 to 9:15, heard a small sound, but didn't see Jenna, then left to check around 12:20 after Elise called. However, the statement made no mention of where Mara was from approximately 9:15 to 10. When cross-referencing Mara's phone data, Kincaid discovered that her device showed no activity during the final 45 minutes of the 9th hour, approximately 9:10 to 9:55, a gap that nearly perfectly matched Jenna's phone activity corridor. The message Mara sent Jenna at 8:52 was also her last message of the evening with no further activity until after 10, by which time Jenna's signal had disappeared. The investigator determined that if Mara left the cabin after 9:15, she had ample time to travel to the 9:58 ping location, interact with Jenna in some way, and return before Elise's first contact at 10:30. To test this, Kincaid simulated the route from cabin to ravine and back, a total of approximately 24 minutes on foot if the person was familiar with the terrain. This meant Mara, with 45 minutes of unaccounted presence, could fully have completed that journey without being seen. Kincaid ran 3 additional models based on walking speed in snow conditions, average adult female speed, and the speed of someone anxious or moving quickly. All 3 yielded results between 18 and 30 minutes, reinforcing feasibility of a cabin-ravine-cabin round trip entirely within the 9:10 to 9:55 window, the exact period during which no witness could verify Mara's location. When all these elements were placed on the comprehensive analysis board, cell site pings, route simulations, real-time durations, old statements, Mara's absence, a first technical conclusion since 2011 was established. The journey leading to the 9:58 ping could not have occurred without involvement of a third party. And the person whose timeline most closely matched that sequence was Mara Quinn. With the timeline reconstructed and near-perfect alignment between Mara Quinn's unaccounted absence and Jenna's 9:58 signal corridor, Detective Quincaid moved to elimination analysis to narrow down to the sole suspect using multi-layer exclusion. First, he re-evaluated the hypothesis of a stranger appearing in the Mill Creek Road area. The original file noted the area as isolated with no recorded vehicles except local residents. Quincaid rechecked traffic patrol reports and license plate data. No unfamiliar vehicles appeared between 7 and 11. Any stranger would have left footprints or tire tracks in fresh snow, yet the ground showed no such traces. The stranger hypothesis was eliminated. The wild animal hypothesis was reassessed. If Jenna had encountered a bear, wolf, or large animal, the incident would have left clear evidence: blood, drag marks, scattered items, disturbed snow. The search teams found no signs of attack. The 9:58 ping indicated the phone was still functional and undamaged. The large animal hypothesis was ruled out. The lone accident hypothesis was re-evaluated. If Jenna had fallen into the ravine, broken through ice, or slipped down a slope, Fleur would likely have detected a heat signature the next morning. To reach the ravine at night, Jenna would have had to leave without a coat, and no reasonable explanation was found. A cabin ravine accident journey would have left footprints, yet the snow was undisturbed. The lone accident hypothesis was eliminated. Quincaid assessed the possibility of a third party such as a hiker, hunter, or camper. Mill Creek Road in winter saw virtually no such activity. No one registered to hunt in the area that day. No resident reports mentioned strangers. No mobile devices other than Jenna's and Mara's registered pings during the critical time frame. The unknown third-party hypothesis was ruled out. With all peripheral possibilities eliminated, Quincaid focused on factors directly related to Mara Quinn. Behavioral alignment. Mara was the last person to verify presence in the cabin and the only one unable to provide objective evidence of whereabouts from 9:15 to 10. Temporal alignment. This gap precisely matched Jenna's phone activity window. Locational alignment. The cabin soil matched 90% with ravine soil, a location an ordinary person would have no reason to visit on a snowy night unless directly connected to events. Relational alignment. Internal tension between Jenna and Mara was documented through messages and controlling behaviors. All behavioral, temporal, locational evidence converged on a single direction. Mara had potential motive, clear opportunity, and an unaccounted time period that perfectly aligned with every key marker in the new timeline. With this conclusion, Quincaid prepared a comprehensive search warrant application for Mara Quinn's current residence in Spokane, Washington, including updated cell site analysis, soil spectroscopy comparison, reconstructed timeline, recovered photo data, and discrepancies in statements. With a completed case file and solid technical argument, Detective Quincaid coordinated with the Spokane Police Department and Park County Prosecutor's Office to obtain a search warrant for Mara Quinn's residence. The warrant was approved based on 3 grounds: temporal match, locational match, and inconsistencies in statements and relationship. The search was conducted at 6:40 in the morning on a late April 2024 day. Mara cooperated as authorities entered but appeared flustered when informed the search scope included all personal property, digital devices, and paper records related to the period she lived with Jenna. During the review of Mara's home office, investigators discovered a folded Montana topographic map in a lower drawer. What drew attention was not the map itself, but a series of red and blue markings, including a small circle precisely at the location of Mill Creek Ravine, the newly identified point from soil spectroscopy and cell site modeling. Mara claimed the map was merely a keepsake, but the ballpoint pen marks showed inconsistent fading, indicating many notations were made after 2015. While searching the winter gear closet, investigators seized a pair of dark fabric gloves stuffed deep behind a toolbox. The glove surface showed reddish-brown soil streaks. Soil samples were collected on site. The Spokane laboratory performed preliminary spectroscopy analysis which initially showed mineral characteristics similar to the ravine soil group. Although in-depth analysis was needed for definitive conclusion, the initial match was a strong indicator that Mara may have directly contacted the ravine environment during the period close to the disappearance. In another cabinet drawer, investigators found a diary-style notebook without recorded years, containing numerous passages describing Mara's psychological state while living with Jenna. Some entries expressed irritation, feelings of being alienated and unable to tolerate being ignored in her own home. One page mentioned that argument that night and the look that made everything spiral out of control, though without specific dates. The notebook demonstrated significantly stronger internal conflict than Mara had previously admitted. Investigators seized all of Mara's old digital devices, including 2 laptops, 3 external hard drives, and an older phone. Using 2024 technology, Kincaid requested deep deleted data recovery from the external drives. On the second external drive, technicians recovered a manually deleted but not fully overwritten text file diary entry. The file contained descriptions of a mistake that cannot be undone, it shouldn't have happened on the porch, and hidden so no one would find it, though no names were mentioned. When cross-referenced with the reconstructed timeline, the content strikingly aligned with the inference that the incident occurred right outside the cabin door. Additionally, a recovered photo of a 2011 Mill Creek area map showed a waypoint mark near the ravine matching the exact coordinates indicated by soil spectroscopy. Simultaneously, the Montana State Laboratory Soil Analysis Report demonstrated that the soil sample from the gloves matched 92% with the ravine soil sample, exceeding the 90% match of the cabin sample and sufficient to establish a physical connection between Mara and the ravine area. The investigative team compiled all new evidence, the map marked with the ravine location, gloves containing ravine soil, diary documenting conflict, deleted diary file describing a mistake at the cabin porch, and the map photo with the waypoint. Combined with Mara's unaccounted time period aligning with Jenna's 9:58 ping and historical inconsistencies in statements, Kincaid reported that the legal threshold for issuing an arrest warrant had been met. The complete case file was forwarded to the Park County prosecutor, and within 48 hours an official arrest warrant was signed, marking the most significant turning point since Jenna Hail's disappearance in 2011. The arrest warrant was executed on the morning of May 3, 2024 when the investigation team and Spokane police approached Mara Quinn in the parking lot behind her workplace. The arrest took place without resistance. Mara appeared surprised but did not resist, only repeatedly asking, "Why now?" while being handcuffed and read her Miranda rights. She was immediately transported to the Spokane Police Department interrogation room where Detective Kincaid and a supporting investigator were already waiting with the entire case file organized into evidence groups. The interrogation began with Mara denying any involvement and insisting everything was coincidence. But Kincaid didn't take an accusatory approach. Instead, he methodically presented each layer of evidence in logical order built throughout the reinvestigation. First, the timeline cross-reference, timestamps between Mara's statements, Elisa's statements, gas station camera data, and especially the gap in Mara's whereabouts from 9:40 to 10:25, which matched the last ping of Jenna's phone at 9:58. Mara fell silent but began showing signs of wavering. Kincaid then presented the soil spectroscopy evidence comparing soil samples from the cabin, the ravine area, and soil seized from gloves in Spokane. The report showed a 92% match with the ravine, which Kincaid emphasized was highly unlikely unless you had actually been there, forcing Mara to confront irrefutable scientific conclusions. Next came the geolocation evidence presented via a large projected map. Cell site analysis of Jenna's device signals and the distance from the cabin to the ravine were reconstructed, showing that someone had to have traveled the exact route later marked similarly on the map seized from Mara's home. Finally, Kincaid introduced the physical evidence, the marked ravine map, the notebook containing contradictory entries, and the recovered text file describing the mistake on the cabin porch. At this point, Mara could no longer maintain composure. She asked for water, her hands trembling slightly, repeatedly avoiding eye contact with the investigators. When Kincaid stated that every piece of objective evidence leads back to you, but only you know what really happened that night, Mara began to cry, covering her face with both hands. After several minutes of silence, she admitted that something did happen, but insisted it was not intentional murder. No one spoke. The room didn't move. When invited to give a full account, Mara began her statement. Her voice, when it finally came, was barely a whisper. She told Kincaid about the porch. About the argument over money, over winter, over Jenna planning to leave after the holidays. Mara had carried the cabin through the worst winter in years, shouldering most costs, and Jenna was just done. The argument escalated. Jenna raised her voice and turned to go inside to grab her things, with Mara following to continue arguing. At the threshold, Jenna pushed Mara's hand away. And according to Mara, that was when Jenna slipped on a thin layer of snow, fell off the edge of the porch, and struck her head hard against the wooden corner near the steps. About the sound of her head hitting wood. And about the silence that followed, the terrible, complete silence that made Mara believe she'd killed her. Jenna lost consciousness immediately. Mara said she panicked, called Jenna's name with no response, and believed Jenna was dead. Instead of calling 911, an action that might have saved Jenna's life or at least documented the incident as an accident, Mara stated she was afraid of being charged with intentional injury because everything would look like I attacked her, especially given the ongoing argument. In a matter of tense minutes, Mara decided to drag Jenna's body inside the cabin to avoid it being seen from the road. After calming down somewhat, she used her own vehicle to transport Jenna to Mill Creek Ravine, a place she knew from their summer hiking trips. Mara stated she placed Jenna near a large solitary tree about 45 meters off the main trail, then covered the body crudely with dry branches and leaves. Kincaid asked her to describe in detail the route taken, parking location, access point to the ravine, and sequence of actions from leaving the cabin to returning home. Mara provided details that matched the location and timing simulation data with startling accuracy. When asked why she hid everything for 13 years, Mara said that at first she thought the incident would be treated as a disappearance in the woods. But as the investigation expanded and search teams searched the entire area, she became increasingly panicked and felt compelled to continue the cover-up. Mara denied any intentional violence and maintained that the fall was accidental, but she admitted to moving and concealing Jenna's body, abandoning the victim without seeking medical help, and attempting to stage the scene to hide the truth. Kincaid asked her to sign the fully recorded and video-documented interrogation transcript. Before signing, Mara asked only one question: if I had called 911 that day, would everything have been different? Kincaid did not answer. The statement was completed after 4 continuous hours. Immediately after Mara Quinn's statement was recorded and cross-checked against investigative data, Detective Kincaid coordinated with the Park County Sheriff's Office to launch a body recovery operation at Mill Creek Ravine. A specialized crime scene team along with a K-9 unit trained in human remains detection was mobilized from Bozeman and moved into the ravine area. Kincaid compared Mara's description, a solitary standing tree separated from the trail by more than 40 meters on the side with a natural gully slope, with topographic maps, and the team identified the 3 most likely matching locations. When the K-9 team began deploying in a spiral pattern from the access point, one of the cadaver dogs named Ranger gave a strong reaction on the eastern downslope area where the leaf litter was unusually compressed and showed signs of prior soil disturbance even after more than a decade. Ranger barked repeatedly, marking an area roughly over 1 meter in diameter. The team immediately cordoned off the area and began careful manual excavation. The first layer revealed only tree roots and rock fragments, but at a depth of about 25 to 30 centimeters, the technician's shovel struck something hard and linear. Upon closer inspection, it was a long bone fragment, highly likely a human tibia. Within 40 minutes, the scene team located the complete but disarticulated skeletal structure arranged naturally as expected after decomposition. Alongside the remains, several personal items appeared: a waxed cord bracelet that Jenna commonly wore, remnants of a decayed fabric bag, an oxidized metal zipper, and a cracked cell phone with completely dead battery. Notably, the forensics team recovered several synthetic fabric fibers, still retaining dark red color, matching the description of the jacket Jenna wore on the night she disappeared according to the immigrant gas station camera footage. This discovery strongly corroborated the accuracy of Mara's statement regarding the location where she left the body, as the actual site matched almost exactly with the position Quincaid had marked on the map. The remains and evidence were transported by specialized vehicle to the University of Montana Forensic Lab for identification via dental records and DNA as well as trauma assessment on the skull bones. At the University of Montana Forensic Lab, the expert team began analyzing all recovered remains to determine cause of death and compare it with Mara's statement. First examination of the skull revealed a linear fracture running from the right temporal region toward the posterior parietal bone with characteristics typical of impact against a hard non-sharp surface consistent with a wooden edge or porch step. Forensic experts determined the extent of the fracture and the pattern of small fragments at the edges indicated a forceful impact that occurred while the victim was alive or immediately before circulatory arrest. No additional signs of violence were found on the long bones, no knife marks, no secondary fractures from impact, and no defensive wounds, supporting the hypothesis that the victim lost the ability to resist almost immediately after the fall. Additionally, the forensic team evaluated environmental factors. Montana's December weather with extremely low temperatures indicated that even if Jenna had not died immediately from the impact, progressive hypothermia would have led to death within 1 to 3 hours, especially if the victim was unconscious, without medical aid, and without any heat source. Soil residue analysis on the jacket fabric showed the victim had been placed directly on cold ground shortly after the incident, consistent with Mara's statement. Forensic pathologists concluded there were no signs of active violence, such as beating, strangulation, or use of a weapon. The official cause of death was recorded as traumatic brain injury leading to loss of consciousness and death under severe hypothermic conditions compatible with the sequence of events Mara described. The technical report was forwarded to the Park County Prosecutor's Office. Jenna's death may have originated from an unintentional incident, but the subsequent chain of actions, not calling for help, moving the body, concealing the scene, staging a disappearance, constituted serious criminal conduct, particularly given the ultimate outcome. When the preliminary hearing began in Livingston in October 2024, the prosecution presented the chain of evidence in a tightly structured manner. First establishing the timeline using cell site data and the 958 ping. Next, soil spectroscopy, demonstrating the suspect's presence at the ravine. Then, physical evidence from Mara's home, such as the map, gloves, and computer data. Finally, the forensic report confirming the cause of death while supporting the argument that the outcome could have been different had timely medical assistance been provided. The prosecution also emphasized the concealment behaviors, deliberately removing the body from the cabin, abandoning it at the ravine, notifying no one, participating in the initial search as an innocent party, and maintaining active deception for 13 years. Three-dimensional images of the ravine scene, simulated travel routes from the cabin, and timing comparisons were presented to demonstrate Mara had sufficient time to carry out the entire sequence. In contrast, the defense focused on the accident, no intent to cause injury, argument, stressing that Jenna fell due to slipping on snow rather than violent impact, that Mara's panic was a momentary psychological reaction, and that the concealment occurred in a state of distress and fear of wrongful accusation. The defense attempted to downplay the legal significance of items like the journal and map, claiming they were old and didn't demonstrate criminal conduct. However, the prosecution countered by pointing out that it is the synthesis of all evidence, not any single item that is decisive. The coincidence of timing, location, concealment behavior, and the evolving statement over the years formed a consistent inferential structure. After 2 weeks of hearings, the jury evaluated the evidence under the "beyond a reasonable doubt" standard. They considered the content of the confession, cross-referenced it with forensic data and 2024 technological findings, and particularly valued the precise match between the statement and the actual body location, a detail only someone present at the scene in 2011 could have known exactly. Although the defense tried to maintain the accident argument, the jury concluded that intent did not lie in the fall itself, but in the subsequent chain of concealment actions that obstructed investigation and directly prevented medical aid, leaving Jenna no chance of survival. At the sentencing hearing held at Park County Court on the morning of November 12, 2024, after 3 days of closed deliberation, the jury delivered the final judgment against Mara Quinn based on the complete forensic evidence, technological data, confession, and concealment behavior spanning more than a decade. Before sentencing, Mara was allowed a brief statement. She acknowledged responsibility for not calling emergency services and for concealing Jenna Hale's body, but once again insisted the initial incident was an unintended accident. However, the court affirmed that Mara's subsequent actions, deciding to move the body, erase traces, file a false missing person report, participate in the search as a witness, were deliberate, prolonged, and intentional, seriously impacting law enforcement's ability to investigate, and depriving the victim of her only chance of survival. The court convicted Mara Quinn of involuntary manslaughter for causing a situation leading to Jenna's death through gross negligence and intentional failure to immediately summon medical assistance, sentencing her to 15 years imprisonment. Additionally, the court convicted her of tampering with evidence and concealment of a human body, sentencing her to 8 years imprisonment due to moving the body from the scene, intentionally concealing it, and staging a disappearance to obstruct investigation. The two sentences were ordered to run consecutively, resulting in a total of 23 years imprisonment at the Montana State Women's Facility. Following the sentencing, the Park County Sheriff's Office held a press conference, releasing the comprehensive investigation summary covering the entire 13-year process, the 2011 search efforts, the stalled period, the reasons the case was added to the cold case list, and especially the 2024 technological breakthrough involving reanalysis of cell site data, soil spectroscopy, and recovery of deleted digital data. The report emphasized that the case serves as clear demonstration that missing person files are never truly closed and that new technology can completely transform understanding of seemingly hopeless cases. After Jenna's remains were positively identified via dental records and DNA comparison, the official file was reclassified from missing person to closed homicide, resolved. By the end of November 2024, the case file was fully closed. After 13 years of interruption, the disappearance of Jenna Hail was finally concluded with a clear resolution, marking one of the successfully solved cold cases thanks to the persistence of investigators and advances in forensic technology. The story of Jenna Hail reminds us of several critical truths about justice, accountability, and the power of modern science. In moments of crisis, the choice to call for help instead of concealing can mean the difference between tragedy and survival. That single decision, made in fear and panic on a frozen Montana porch, cost Jenna her life and cost Mara Quinn her freedom for 23 years. This case also underscores the reality that no case is ever truly closed. Technology evolves. Methods improve. And investigators like Detective Daniel Quincaid, armed with tools that didn't exist a decade earlier, can bring answers to families who never stopped waiting. Jenna Hail was 24 years old. She had plans. She had a family who loved her. She had a sister waiting for a video call that never came. For 13 years, that family lived with questions that had no answers. Now they know. The answers came not from a deathbed confession or a chance discovery, but from the methodical, patient work of investigators who refused to let the file gather dust. For 13 years, Jenna Hail waited in silence. Now, she's finally been heard. If this case moved you, if it reminded you that justice, though delayed, can still arrive, then do this. Subscribe to Cold Case Beacon right now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop a comment below and let me know which cold case you want us to investigate next. Because there are thousands of families still waiting. Thousands of cases that the world forgot but that we refuse to let stay forgotten. This is Cold Case Beacon. We don't let the forgotten stay forgotten.